Hey, welcome to Fluid Backstage 2015. I'm your host, Josh Hageman. With us today is none other than Eternia.
Hey.
You can call me Reverend,
Yep.
the Reverend,
Yep.
the Eternia.
Reverend J, that's what I'm going to call you. Juicy J, I don't know, something.
Questions that we got for you as we get going. What is your heart towards arts and ministry?
That's funny because we talked about that in the session a bit, and the first thing I thought when you used the word ministry was, and I think the reason why is just because ministry is an accurate term, but it is a term in my mind that makes me think of us and them. So me, the Christian, and other, the unsaved, and I would love for ministry to just be so organic that the word isn't even used, but that's just because I find that when we create kind of these systems in order to do things like disciple, like minister, like pastor, like shepherd, it sometimes takes away some of the genuineness of what we're doing and how we do it. So I guess right now, today, I was ministering perhaps to
Absolutely.
1,500 young people. However, I would describe it as literally, Jefferson did that quote about C.S. Lewis saying, love is being, you cannot love without being vulnerable. I have loved, and they have shown me love in return by dropping the barriers, and that's reciprocal. It's not one way. Ministering almost feels like one way.
If we're going to look at art in ministry and try and define art as a secular thing and a Christian thing, we always go back to the whole secular versus Christian music debate.
Yeah.
Is that even a thing anymore?
I take issue with the whole compartmentalization of art, creativity, and music in general.
Okay, good.
I think that as humans we like to compartmentalize. I think it's to our own detriment. So for me, I would say I wish that there weren't the titles of Christian music and secular music. I understand why they exist, but I think that you either have, if I was going to create my own compartments, if I had to, which I don't want to, I would pick authentic and inauthentic, genuine or industry. Like, these are things that I see and hear when I see music, but I never want to think to myself, Christian or non-Christian. I do want to feel like it's coming from the deepest part of a person. Okay. And of course, if someone has been filled with the Spirit and the deepest part of them is connected to Christ, then that will become obvious. It might not be obvious the second they start, if they don't spit Bible verses, but their heart and their spirit, I think, will just naturally flow from the place that they're abiding in. Is there such thing as music that is created for Christians by Christians? Absolutely. Is there music that's created for non-Christians by non-Christians? Absolutely. This is a fact. This is as real as this table. But do I think that ultimately music is music? Yes, at the end of the day. Now, are you honoring God with your music? There are a lot of people that dig deep into their own self, their own ego, their own wretchedness. I mean, you can also be self-focused by focusing on your wretchedness. You can be humble and be self-focused, which I think I did a lot in most of my music before I was a believer. So yeah, the focus will totally depend on where your heart is. But music is music, and I think music is a gift from God, just like, I don't know, anything creative, even food that we consume, even dancing, even whatever it is, clothing, the way we dress. I think that it's functional. It can be used to honor and glorify God, and it can also be used for our pleasure as a gift from God. He gets pleasure, we get pleasure. There's a whole lot of different uses for these things. They're just tools in my mind, and they're tools and they're gifts from God. How we use them is how we use them. Some people really, use these tools to destroy. That might be a lot of secular music, And yet, it's so interesting. Now that I'm a Christian, I'll hear songs and I hear them a whole new way, and I'll start thinking like literally everyone is Christian. For example, does anybody else think Mumford & Sons are Christian? Because I do.
Oh, yeah.
I listen to Mumford & Sons and I'm like, this totally sounds like he's talking to God. Does anybody else hear this? This is what I'm saying. It's like,
I don't know what Mumford & Sons, but man, there's definitely a Coldplay Jesus out there.
Yeah, like you listen to like their content. It's like, this can't be about a woman. This can't be about. So I say all that to say, like, God can use the most wretched of souls.
I agree.
So
okay, so
music is music.
Let's back it up just a little bit. You mentioned how long have you been saved now?
Actually 6 years.
That's amazing.
6 years.
So
yeah.
how did the whole, take us through a little bit of the process. How did you move from death to life?
Testimony. I was living in New York City. I do believe the story as to how I even ended up in New York. My whole life was based on faith. I did have faith in God. I did pray to a God, even when I was a non-believer. What I was unsure about was Jesus Christ. I was raised in the church. But so many things happened miraculously, even before I was a Christian, through this communication with God that I had, right? And yeah, moving to New York City was a big part of that. It was all very God-like in how it happened. It kind of fell into place within a couple weeks and boom, I was there. And same thing with getting work there, same thing with doing my music there. Like everything was very fluid without a lot of effort. And I do believe that God brought me there. I think his ultimate purpose was to bring me to him. So he kind of took me to the bottom, my bottom. It's not, I wasn't a drug addict. I didn't almost die, but my bottom, it was just a place where I just had a lot of regrets and guilt and shame, and I felt worthless, and I just, close enough that you get to not wanting to live anymore. And, you pray that prayer from the depth of your soul. It's what Pastor Sunder was talking about today when he talks about these prayers that are like level 1, just intimate, guttural, like almost sounds that don't make sense. And I prayed this prayer. It was a desire removal prayer. This is before I was a Christian. I basically said, God, if you're out there, I need your help because I'm not going to be able to surrender these things. I need your help when it comes to liquor. I had an issue with liquor. When it comes to boys and sex, and when it comes to food. And I said, I really want you to remove these desires from me. Like just remove them, just take them away. I don't have it in me. I don't have the discipline. And I know that this is a prayer that lines up with your heart. Because I had learned, I've been going to this church. I wasn't a Christian, but I've been attending Trinity Grace. Shout out to John Tyson. Yeah. And I had been attending Trinity Grace, and I'm like, you pray a prayer that's aligned with God's heart, and he's got to hear it. And it was just from the depth of me. And when I tell you, and people probably don't believe me, but if you knew me then, you'd know it's true. That night, it wasn't that week, it wasn't that month, that night, all those 3 things I mentioned, so the abuse of alcohol, the abuse of food, and just men and intimate relationships in general, completely cut out of my life. And it wasn't temporary. Like, it was pretty amazing, and especially amazing because I used to see an ad for Bacardi and my mouth would water. Like just an ad, and I'd be like, ugh! I used to get rum and Bacardi, and I drink it, and it just tasted like, rum and Coke, and it just tasted like Coke. I wouldn't even believe there was any rum in it, and I'd have to give it to my friend, and they'd be like, ugh. And I'd be like, I don't taste anything, I just taste Coke. Like, so for me to be able to go into bars, I was still performing, right? And not even want to touch it was a God thing. That wasn't a me thing. That wasn't I'm gonna try thing. It was a God thing. He removed those desires. And that was the beginning of him pursuing me. A year later, I was baptized. So that was just the beginning. But there's been so many other miraculous answers to prayer that are literally, and it's not just about him fulfilling my needs, but I think when you're a newbie, God really affirms his love for you. And then your prayers hopefully start to become about other things and other people and not yourself. But at the beginning, it was just like help, It's like those guttural. So that's what brought me to Christ. And then there's been a lot of amazing things that's happened since then.
In your opinion, can someone come to Christ before they hit bottom?
Absolutely.
So talk about that because you actually hear a lot about, I hit bottom. And if you're listening here today, you might not hit bottom.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But how do you get to Christ before getting to bottom?
Yeah, I have experienced a very tailor-made pursuing, God pursuing me, tailor-made. Including the language that I speak. He knows how to reach me in my language, which is different than someone else's. So everyone, when God pursues them, when Christ pursues them, is going to hear his voice and his language in their own, in the unique way that he's designed them and made them. So some people don't need to make the biggest mistakes of their lives in order to acknowledge and feel the presence of God. Some people are born with the inherent knowledge of Christ and God. I always think of people, I don't know if this is answering your question, but I think of people like Sojourner Truth. She was a civil rights leader in the States, but people don't really talk about her faith. She was such a Christian. Like when I say Christian, she did not even read the Bible, and she had a direct experience with God. knew right away it was the God of which her mother speaked, who was Jesus Christ, and knew God before anybody ever read the words of the Bible to her. Then when the words of the Bible were read, she's kind of like, oh, okay, what I already know. And so that's somebody that I don't think hit, she was already born into slavery, but God speaks to us all in this way that he knows is going to impact us. And if for one person, if it was when they were 5 years old, before they became an alcoholic or whatever, that's how God knew that you would hear his voice and come. And that's it. I think it's beautiful because when I read the New Testament and I read Jesus Christ's response to people, it is so tailor-made to who they are. Yeah. Like you wonder, why did he say this to this person and this to this person when it completely conflicts in a way? You follow me, you go home to your family, you and I love that because that means that what God is saying to me, what Christ is saying to me can conflict with what Christ has said to you, and it can still be what Christ has said to us, So
there absolutely is something to be said for that personal relationship that each one of us have with Christ, and it sounds like he's done an incredible work in your life. So you've been a part of the music industry for quite some time.
20 years.
There you go. You've been part of not just the music, but media all in general.
Yeah.
What is in your heart for this next season?
Oh man, so Lorna Duick, Context with Lorna Duick, she asked me a similar question. She said, what do you think, this is a year ago she asked me, she said, what do you think, God's gifting is? I don't think she asked about calling, she asked about your gifting, but like your spiritual gifting, your ministry, right, in a way. And I couldn't answer her, and I've been thinking about it for the last year, and that was a year ago. God's calling in my life right now is preparing me for something. We use the term seasons. I feel like God's preparing me for something scary and difficult and potentially tragic, but hard and rewarding for him, for his kingdom. And I'm not ready yet. And maybe I'm just not obeying like Jonah. Like maybe it's one of those things where I am ready, I'm just not doing. But no, I think God's doing a work in me to prepare me for that. And I don't know what that is. It could be, I picture something super drastic, like, selling all your belongings and going and living in another country. Right. It might not be that drastic, but I do think it is way more courageous and drastic than how I'm living now. And I don't know what that is. And I'm scared. It's funny because when I listened to Jefferson this morning, it really spoke to me. Just that Jonah, the fear. God says, hey, go here. And Jonah's like, deuces. Like, I am going the opposite direction. God hasn't been so direct with me yet, but I think he does want me to honor him in the little things that he tells me to do in order to know that I'm ready for the big things, and I'm not always... I have always been somebody that learned by falling and making mistakes, and so I think God's really toughening me up for something, and I'm not sure what. So I don't know if that answers your question, but... It does. Yeah.
Eternia, thanks so much for being a part of this conference and Fluid Backstage. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Rev.